Electric cars seem to be all the rage these days, and Tesla is leading the charge, no pun intended. But to many potential buyers, electric cars are just too expensive. Even the so-called budget options like the Nissan Leaf start at a hefty $32,000. And if you want a Tesla, the Model 3 starts at just shy of 40 grand. But what if I told you you could get a Tesla right now for around $25,000? No gimmicks, no rebates, no tax incentives, just about 25 grand out the door. Well, I have done just that, and today we'll take a look at what that much money will buy you, and if a cheap, relatively speaking, used Tesla is right for you. So first off, how do you even get a Tesla for this price? Well, the main way is through a private sale. You want to hit up sites like Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, or even AutoTrader. You'll be making a deal directly with the owner of the vehicle, and in doing so, you'll cut out the costs of profit margin for a middleman like a car dealership. At this price, you'll be looking for a Tesla Model S made between 2012 and 2014. These models lack a few features that we'll go over in a minute, but with a bit of diligence and patience, they're not too hard to find around this price. In addition to everything you usually have to look out for when buying a used car, there's a few Tesla-specific things to watch out for. The first, and probably most obvious, is the battery. Generally speaking, Tesla batteries lose between 5 and 9% of their rated range every 100,000 miles. If the car you're looking at has lost way more than 9%, you might want to move on. Secondly, unlike most gas cars, you might actually want to steer clear of a super low mileage car. Prior to 2016, Tesla had some issues with the bearings in their electric motors, which caused them to only last for about 20 to 40,000 miles before they'd start to fail and make a buzzing sound while you're driving. After about 2016, Tesla updated the design of their motors to fix this issue, and they've been replacing any motors making noise with the updated units ever since. What this means though is that if the car you're looking at doesn't have many miles, say less than 20,000, it could still have an older original electric motor that's about to fail. If the car you're looking at buying has had the motor changed out at some point, check with the owner to see if they still have the service paperwork from when it was changed. The part number of the replacement drive unit should be listed on that paperwork. And if the part number ends with the letter Q or later in the alphabet, it's the newer, revised, updated version with the fixed bearings. The last major thing to look out for is the MCU, or Media Control Unit. Prior to 2018, all Teslas shipped with MCU1. I'm not going to go too deep into the details here, but suffice it to say, the MCU1 had a plethora of issues, from the eMMC chips burning out, to the touchscreens delaminating, and in some cases leaking the LCD fluid in the touchscreen. And those issues aside, the MCU1 uses a much older processor that runs pretty slow now. Tesla now has a program where they'll upgrade your car to an MCU2 for the low sale price of $1,500 and an additional $500 if you want to keep your FM and XM radio working after the upgrade. So keep an eye out for a car that's already had this upgrade done, like mine. Teslas from this era were almost like old Mopars in that you could order whatever combination of options you wanted. There were far too many individual options, even just in those 2 years, to list here. But the main one is battery size. Teslas from this era came in 40, 60, or 85 kilowatt hours with 139, 210, or 265 miles of range respectively. I would suggest staying away from the 40 kilowatt hour model unless you're just looking for a secondary commuter car. And if you get a 60 kilowatt hour car, remember that the ability to supercharge was optional on 60 kilowatt hour cars. So make sure the car you're looking at supports supercharging if that's something that's important to you. The 85 kilowatt hour cars are the ones you really want though. Their EPA estimated range is actually greater than the standard range Model 3, and they all come with free lifetime supercharging for the life of the vehicle. Now, you might be wondering why I would buy a car that's coming up on 10 years old for this much money. Surely this car pales in comparison to a modern Tesla, right? Well, no, actually. Tesla did a pretty good job with the first Model S when it came out, and honestly, it still feels almost like a brand new car. It's not perfect. In addition to the major issues we've already addressed, There were things like panel gap issues, and the early panoramic sunroofs were prone to leaking, but compared to the Model 3, this aging Model S holds its own with ease. So let's take a look at my car. This is a 2013 Tesla Model S P85 with just north of 110,000 miles. The drive unit has been replaced, but the battery is original. It still charges to around 240 to 245-ish miles of range on a full charge, which equates to a degradation of about 9%. The color was called Dolphin Gray. The 21-inch wheels were installed aftermarket with summer tires mounted, while the original 19-inch rims were switched over to winter tires. And as for options, this car has premium connectivity, which means I get free unlimited LTE data for the life of the vehicle, premium sound, which swaps the stock 7-speaker sound system for an upgraded 12-speaker sound system with a subwoofer, black leather performance seats with red trim and Alcantara inserts, adjustable air suspension, the tech package, which added GPS navigation, a backup camera, and HID headlights, the Sub-Zero weather package, which added heated rear seats and wiper defrosters, and folding mirrors, which are pretty self-explanatory and actually come in handy when I'm squeezing this in and out of our barn. And last but not least, my car was optioned with a more traditional body-colored hardtop roof rather than the glass sunroof. And like I mentioned before, this car has had the MCU2 upgrade, so everything is butter smooth, and it now has games and video streaming in-car. Personally, I don't ever see myself kicking back for movie night in the Tesla, but I do like how fast and fluid everything is, and that it doesn't have the reliability issues that the original MCU did. Unfortunately, when the MCU was upgraded, the previous owner didn't pay the extra $500 to keep the FM radio, so I'll probably end up going into a service center to have that done here pretty soon. I would really like to take this car, especially with the premium sound system, to a drive-in movie theater, and I'm going to need the FM radio for that. Speaking of the sound system, it's really good, but the frequency response isn't the best. It's seriously lacking in the mids and the lower mids, and unfortunately there's no true equalizer, despite how easy that would be to add through a software update. But you can adjust the tone setting, and that does help out quite a bit. Now, something you might have heard online is people's general disdain for Tesla's first-generation seats, with some going as far as to say they're the least comfortable car seats they've ever sat in. Now, for me personally, while they're not the most comfortable car seats I've ever experienced, I find these Tesla seats to be perfectly comfortable in my opinion. I've never actually sat in one of Tesla's next-gen seats though, so take this with a grain of salt, but compared to all other car seats I've ever sat in, these are far from the worst. Sure, the foam base could maybe be a little bit thicker and softer, but the bolsters are big enough to keep you in place, while not so big that you feel claustrophobic. And one thing I like is that the headrest, despite not being adjustable, is in a pretty good place, and it's not too far forward that you feel like you're tipping your head down like some cars I've been in. The trunk is huge, and when you fold the rear seats down, well, I'm 6'2" and have no problems laying down in here. And there's also the frunk, or front trunk, under the hood, which is not air conditioned, so I use that in the summertime for hauling takeout back home because it keeps the food warm. As far as four-door sedans go, the cargo space does not disappoint. Everything's gone pretty well in my first month with the Tesla. It hasn't been perfect. My Gen 1 mobile connector refuses to charge on a 120-volt outlet, despite being completely compatible, and the point where the rear half-shaft splines mesh with the wheel hub developed a subtle clicking sound after a few weeks. I pulled the wheel hubs off and discovered that the splines were dry as a bone, and there's supposed to be grease in them. This isn't really a Tesla-specific issue. I just repacked them with a high moly paste, put it all back together, and it's been pretty much quiet ever since. Which leads us nicely to talking about repairs. Surprisingly, the #1 question people have asked me about this car is what I'll do if it ever breaks down, and with over 100,000 miles on it, that's not outside the realm of possibility. Should something on the car ever break, you can pretty much get anything besides structural or powertrain components straight from Tesla. So if I do ever have any problems with something like the air conditioning or air suspension or anything else a normal car would have, the repair will be the same as a normal car. I buy the part and I fix the problem. The drivetrains at this point have proven themselves to be pretty much bulletproof, but if I do ever have a problem with it, I'll just have to address it if and when it arises. Really, having the Tesla hasn't been too different from any other car. The regenerative braking took me maybe all of 30 minutes to get used to, and I plug into the 240 volt outlet we have in our barn whenever the battery needs charging, and the car is always full by morning. Another plus of this car over something like the Model 3 is that the whole car, body, frame, everything, is made out of aluminum. And while people in the South might not value that very much, up here in the Salt Belt where I live, it is fantastic to know that I don't have to worry about my amazing car ever rusting. Aluminum does still corrode, yes, but that doesn't happen nearly as fast as steel rusts. And as for why I didn't buy something like the Chevy Bolt or Nissan Leaf, which used would be even cheaper, the biggest reason was charging. Both of those cars only come with a 120 volt level 1 home charger, versus the Tesla, which includes a 240 volt compatible level 2 charger. And even more important, I wanted an EV to be my main car, my only car, and for road tripping, having free unlimited access to Tesla's supercharger network is a huge perk, one that in many cases can be a make or break when it comes to using an EV as your only vehicle. Now, before you leap to the comments to tell me all about Electrify America and EVgo, most models of Chevy Bolt or Nissan Leaf only support fast charging at about 50 kilowatts, even when plugged into a fast charger. This Tesla Model S, despite how old it is, can charge at a rate of 120 kilowatts. That, paired with the larger batteries, means you get more range in less time. And for me, that alone was worth the extra $8,000 to $10,000 over a used Chevy Bolt. Oh, and even though it's not a dual motor car, the 422 horsepower and 442 pound-feet of torque at 0 RPM will beat pretty much any other car on the road to 80 miles an hour. Even though it's not ludicrous, it has put a smile on the face of every person who's experienced it. 0 to 60 in 4 seconds is nothing to sneeze at. So what do you think? Are you going to hold out a few more years for Musk's mythical $25,000 Tesla, or start looking for one today? I'm planning to do a few follow-up videos about the Tesla, maybe see how it does on a road trip, and how it does in the wintertime especially. 422 horsepower to the rear wheels in the winter should be a blast. So in the meantime, if you guys have any questions, be sure to sound off in the comments down below and I'll get to them in the next video. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked the video, hit like, get subscribed, and ring the bell so you get notified when I post new videos. And I will see you guys in the next one. Of course it would start pouring right as I try to film plugging the car into a supercharger. Literally pouring.